time to get ready for Halloween. It's time to sit down once again with your favorite spooky games. But we understand you got stuff to do. Decorations to buy, costumes to plan, lanterns to jacko. How does one even find time for spooky games? Well, you're in the right place, friend, because this is Punching Weight, a celebration of the weird, ambitious, and unnecessary. And we've got 3 games perfect for your hectic, spook-filled lifestyle. This is Punching Weight Episode 10, Horror on the Go. Let's start out with a really obscure one. Clock Tower for the Japanese-only Bandai Wonderswan. The Wonderswan was a portable device co-developed by the late Gunpei Yokoi, father of the Game Boy, released in 1999 to compete with the Game Boy Color and later the Game Boy Advance. It was never released outside of Japan. I remember it making waves here in the States for having updated ports of Final Fantasies 1 and 2, which was a pretty big deal until we eventually got our fair share. That was all I really knew about the system until I found out just a few years ago it also had a port of the original Clock Tower, and much to my surprise, it's a pretty faithful port of the Japanese original, something no die-hard Clock Tower fan should be without. If you are unfamiliar with Clock Tower, it is a point-and-click horror adventure game originally released on the Super Famicom and later ported to the PlayStation 1. You may know it simply as that game where a guy with giant scissors chases you around a mansion. And usually he's hiding away somewhere waiting for a chance to surprise you, but other times Scissor Man will come and find you. It's more effective than you'd think. There's a pretty good story with some great twists, and the many multiple endings offer lots of replay, though like many adventure games, it can be quite dull at times. It's not for everyone. But Clock Tower is a game uniquely qualified for a handheld port. Because you don't have direct control over your character, there's no combat to speak of, and the game is sprite-based and two-dimensional. In retrospect, it's a no-brainer and kinda surprising that this was the only attempt to bring it to the handheld market. This is a functioning portable version of Clock Tower, but there are some compromises. Jennifer moves incredibly slow, the close-up shots lose some of their detail, the music and especially the sound effects take a hit, and there's no English translation, so if you're not multilingual, you'll need to already know where to go. I think this is also technically a port of the PlayStation 1 version, the first Fear, because this guy isn't just some jump scare Johnny, he gets up and shambles after you. I do not remember that happening in the Super Famicom version, and I'll be honest, it scared the crap out of me. Clock Tower for the Wonderswan is rough around the edges, but is a great port and actually one of the best handheld horror games in existence. Those unfamiliar with this game should play the console versions first. This is definitely not the best first impression for the series, but Clock Tower fans would be foolish to pass on this one. Next, we have Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare for the Game Boy Color. We've been given a ton of requests for this one, and with good cause. After covering the cancelled Game Boy Color port of the original Resident Evil, you all made it clear we need to spend time with the game that successfully crammed a full 3D horror game onto a Game Boy Color cart. Okay, that might not even be fair. Resident Evil was only 1 disc. The New Nightmare was twice that. Now, for the record, I'm not super familiar with The New Nightmare, but I've submitted myself to the Uwe Boll film it's loosely based on multiple times, and that's gotta count for something, right? I can definitely say I liked this game more. In order to get everything to fit on a Game Boy Color cart, naturally there are lots of truncated and deleted segments, but it's still quite an achievement. It uses the same basic tricks as Resident Evil, crude but well-animated sprites moving over low-res digitized images from the original game. At its core, it's an adventure game. You'll spend most of your time prowling spooky environments for keys, diary pages, and so on. Navigation is pretty loose. Camera shifts can be pretty sudden, and constant changes in perspective make keeping your bearings a little confusing. No map definitely hurts. It's easy to get lost or forget where the hell the damn attic is again! And while the digitized backgrounds are impressive given the hardware, it can sometimes be hard to tell what's a wall and what's a door. The thing that likely sealed the original Resident Evil's Game Boy Color fate was the combat. Frankly, it just didn't work, and it was hard to see it ever coming together. The New Nightmare cleverly solves this problem with random battles. Instead of fighting enemies in-game, a message occasionally pops up that our hero senses trouble, and you are whisked away to an isometric battlefield where enemies phase in and descend upon you. There's 2 problems here, though. It doesn't control very well, and enemies prove to be very lazy pursuers. It's never very satisfying or challenging, plus robs the game of any possible scares, though it does work as an action game. Food for thought, though, Alone in the Dark and Resident Evil had a bit of a competitive and symbiotic relationship in the early years. It's interesting that the Resident Evil game that did come out on the Game Boy Color, Resident Evil Gaiden, also used random battles, but was released 6 months after The New Nightmare. But whatever the case, the consumer wins here. That's 2 fine horror games for the Game Boy Color. Retro collectors, get cracking. But enough playing around, let's get to the games that actually qualify as scary and can be purchased digitally right now. Dementium The Ward and Dementium 2 for the Nintendo DS, also available on the eShop and Steam. Fun fact, developers Renegade Kid actually pitched these games twice to Konami as possible Silent Hill ports, but they passed both times. These were almost Silent Hill games. That would have been so much better than a digital novel. But anyway, grab your headphones and kill the lights. These first-person action games feature incredible lighting effects, cartoonish amounts of blood and gore, great level and creature design, and incredible music and sound, an absolute treat for horror fans. In the Dementium games, you play as William Redmore, trapped in hospitals that have, let's just say, seen better days. They're both super bloody and a ridiculous ill-bleed kind of vibe, and creature design is way over the top, a la The Suffering. You can tell these games are made by people who love and understand the fun you can have with horror. For instance, in a puzzle early on, you have to play D-E-A-D on a piano to get a key. Yes, you have to play dead to solve the puzzle. But the game does bring the scares, because you are constantly enveloped in darkness. There was just enough lingering tension to keep me on edge. For horror fans, by horror fans. My kind of game. I have to admit, the Dementium games have been on my pile of shame for years. I've owned the second game for a while and hardly touched it, and I don't really have a good excuse. Before this video, I'd never played the original game, but I was pleasantly surprised by how incredibly well it looked and played. Though the second game is the more robust experience, they're both recommended for horror fans. And for the record, I'm using emulation to capture gameplay footage, and it's difficult to recreate the touchscreen with a mouse instead of a stylus. It plays much better on a proper DS, which is why I recommend the remastered version. Dementium Remastered is available on the eShop, and Dementium 2 HD is available on Steam, and if you're a collector, scooping up physical copies won't set you back much. That's it for this episode. As always, we appreciate those requests. If there are any weird, ambitious, or unnecessary games you'd like us to cover in future episodes of Punching Weight, let us know in the comments below. On a previous episode of Punching Weight, we covered Resident Evil ports, prototypes, and oddities. That's the video on the left. And if you want to learn more about Clock Tower, check out our comprehensive review of the PlayStation game on the right. Also, check out our live stream channel where we recently played some Rule of Rose. That's the video in the middle. Stop Skeletons from Fighting is a Patreon-supported show and would not be possible without every single one of these fine people. If you'd like to support the show and see your name here, click the Patreon logo and pledge what you can. We're busy working on our Halloween videos right now, so be sure to hit that subscribe button too. It's gonna be a fun, spooky good time. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.